Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
We will make it a more fair tax. I especially want to see it more fair to the folks that pay the tax, the working men and women of the state of Arkansas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. How do you get on a committee like that, or how did you specifically? I mean, how did you get on that task force? Were you asked to be on it?
I was asked, and I agreed to that. I think it's an honor to be on that. I have, of course, owned my own business and been in the corporate world forever. So I bring that experience to the table, and I look at the folks who are coming on board, and whoever selected this group, and I'm not sure who selected it, did a good job of including all segments of our state's demographics. Mm-hmm. They've got business owners. We've got CPAs. We've got lawyers. We've got folks at school teachers. They did a really good job of making it all encompassing.
Yeah, I believe it was Senator Dismang that appointed the Senate side of things. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you got your colleagues. You got Republican Jim Hendren, Democrat Keith Ingram, Democrat Joyce Elliott, Republican Bart Hester, Republican Missy Irvin. Then you have Larry Teague, who's a Democrat as well, and then there you are, Republican Dave Wallace. So you mentioned some of their qualifications. Obviously, owning a business is certainly a qualification, I believe, to do a lot of stuff, especially run for office, because you certainly know how the government is treats small businesses, and I don't think it's well a lot of times. Do you have hopes that we might go into this task force with the idea that if the government comes out making less money than they're making now, that is not a bad thing? That's a good thing?
No, I think it's a good thing. Paul, and we've talked about this. I have said for the last 3 years I've been in office, and probably many years before that there's still fluff in our state's budget. There's still areas to be cut. We've cut some, but in the corporate world, and even in my own private business, if you have a bad quarter, can't help you if you have a bad year, you cut. You cut your budget to meet your revenue. You don't increase the revenue that you don't have the ability to increase unless you do a better job of selling in order to meet the expenses. The best way that we can manage that is by cutting expenses, and we still have too much fat in our state government, and we've got to keep looking at that, and we've got to drive that down.
Yeah, and I really hope that that is the focus of this. I guess the idea, and I feel like this is going to be an argument. I feel like this is an argument to be had. Are revenue neutral tax cuts really tax cuts? Do you think revenue neutral tax cuts are really tax cuts?
They're designed to be, but I'm not sure they always are.
Yeah,
and that's a very good point.
Yeah,
and we've got to do a better job of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, my whole perspective on that is if it's just kind of a shell game where we shift this here and shift that there, that's not necessarily I don't believe it's a tax. I don't believe it's a real tax cut, I guess is what I would say, or at least maybe it's not it's not my ideal tax cut. Let me say that.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm going to tell you, in order to be competitive, in order to bring jobs into our state, when you've got Tennessee on one side with no state tax, and Texas on the other side, and Missouri and Oklahoma are getting into this game also, we've got to lower that state income tax.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly
and
right.
We've got to make it. We've got to make it where these companies want to come to us.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that? I was kind of looking at what some people are saying. Because I know you're aware that the governor had to cut budget. He had to cut budget by $70 million. He called it a revenue problem and not a spending problem. But I'm not so sure. We've had increases of spending every year he's been here. which is troubling to me, to say the least. And now they're saying, but it is maybe revenue. And when you look at the corporations, specifically, when you look at C corporations, I'm starting to hear people say, hey, we got some complaints, we're not getting these corporate tax receipts in. Could it be because our philosophy of economic development maybe has to do with giving C corporations massive tax incentives and tax breaks, and maybe that's why they're sending in less taxes?
Paul, I'm not sure. We're going to have to take a hard look at that and dig into it and just see what it does. That's a great question. I don't have the answer to that right now. I want to find that answer.
Yeah. Well, Senator Dave Wallace, I sure do appreciate you coming on the program, and I appreciate, again, your bill to end special elections. If it would have passed, it would have been a huge, I feel like, blow to the power structure of this state, where we have mechanisms in place that make it so much easier for government to grow. And I think the definition of government growth is raising your taxes or creating new revenue sources, revenue streams from the people. And I just feel like if people want a tax increase, great, but let's get the majority of the people, as many people as we can, at the polls to do it. And so I really appreciate that sentiment, sir.
And you were exactly right. I tell you what, they linked the voting machines to that, and that was what drug that bill finally down in the House. They got to the county clerks, and they kept talking about, we're not going to be able to handle this massive load into elections, and it scared the county clerks, and that was enough to drag that down. I mean, it was a 50-50, a 50 split, I think, in the House.
Yeah. Well, superintendents everywhere were terrified that they'd never get a tax increase.
Oh, yeah.
And that shows you that this whole process is really wrong. It doesn't have the people, the best interest of the people at heart. We've got folks in the northwest part of the state, several school districts, I think 3 school districts. They're talking about, raising their taxes, their millage, and now we have this going on, a special election in Blytheville. And they love special elections. It's the opium of big government politicians.
I had a county executive, not from my district, tell me, we have to have special elections. That's the only way I can get a tax increase. And I said, and that's why I'm running this bill.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I wonder, do they look at you like, huh? Or do they get it? Do they get what they just said is a little, there's some... there's a deception behind that. They are supporting something that is a way to deceive the people in many ways,
and deceive himself. And we went out. I sat down talking with 30 minutes and pointed out. And I think in theory, I convinced him, but as far as he was concerned, he did not want that to pass, not on his watch. Yeah, well, but that's a problem. That's the problem we've got. And you get the man and the woman out there working so hard every day, making a living, they're doing what they need to be doing, and they don't, a special election after special election, they wear out. Yeah, and you want me to take off work to go vote? For when I really only need to be taking off work to go vote. In the few times that we have our elections, or if there's an emergency, if you had a tornado that came and destroyed your town and you needed to raise some money. I mean, there were those provisions were all in there, correct? Yeah, they were all in there. Yeah. All that. We put ample provisions that nothing that was disaster related would have ever stopped a special election. Mm-hmm. Wow. All right. Well, Senator Dave Wallace, we appreciate you being on. Thank you so much, and we'd love to keep the channels of communication open when you start your task force meetings. When's the first meeting for this task force? They have not said it yet, but I've been told that it will meet often, and that we will meet at least every other month, and more likely, probably at least a couple times a month. Okay. All right. I know that there's a lot of emphasis being placed on it, rightfully so. All right. We appreciate it. Senator Dave Wallace. Be safe, sir. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, and I'm here to Kaiser, Arkansas for their city council meeting. All righty. Okay.